She didn't look like the typical customer this luxury store was used to, but that didn't mean she didn't belong. A black single mom in her early 30s, dressed in a clean but simple outfit, walked into Valencia and Company, one of the city's most exclusive boutiques. Her daughter, maybe 7 or 8, clutched her hand excitedly, pointing at the shiny purses and glittering displays. They weren't there to browse, they were there for a purpose, to buy something special for her daughter's upcoming birthday. The mom had saved up for weeks. To her, this day was about creating a memory, something joyful. But she had no idea that before this day ended, the entire store would be watching her, and that someone very powerful was about to make a decision that would change everything. The moment she stepped inside, the air shifted. Soft classical music floated through the store, and the lighting was warm but intimidating, casting golden glows on the price tags, not people. Employees stood behind glass counters like they were guarding treasure. 2 looked up from their tablets, scanning her top to bottom with quick, trained glances. She noticed it. So did her daughter. The store had an energy, silent judgment wrapped in polished marble. Customers in designer coats were being offered champagne. The single mom? She wasn't even offered a greeting. Still, she smiled gently and walked toward the jewelry section. She didn't come to impress anyone, just to buy something meaningful. But in places like this, dignity sometimes comes with a price tag. As she leaned in to look at a delicate silver necklace behind the glass, a sales associate nearby, mid-20s, glossy hair, sharp nails, glanced her way and then turned to whisper something to a coworker. They both chuckled. She pretended not to notice. But her daughter did. Her little brows furrowed, sensing something wasn't right. The mom gently asked, "Excuse me, could I see that one?" pointing to the necklace. The associate didn't move. Instead, she raised an eyebrow and said flatly, "That one's a limited collection piece. Price starts at $1,200. There was a pause. The kind that makes your stomach drop. The mom nodded calmly. "That's fine. I'd still like to see it." Another whispered comment from the coworker. "She's not serious." They didn't even try to lower their voices anymore. And just like that, the store's polished silence turned into something uglier. The sales associate finally walked over, slowly, like it was a favor, and unlocked the case with an exaggerated sigh. As she placed the necklace on the counter, she said loud enough for others to hear, "Just so you know, we don't do payment plans on pieces like this." A few customers nearby turned their heads. One woman smirked. Another shook her head in awkward sympathy. Trying to hold her composure, the mom softly replied, "I wasn't going to ask for one." But it didn't stop there. When her daughter reached out to admire the necklace, the associate quickly slid it back. "Let's not get fingerprints on it, sweetie," she said with a tight smile that wasn't really a smile at all. Then came the final sting. "Maybe try the outlet store a few blocks down. Things there are more approachable." The mom's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from the effort it took not to break. And her daughter? She just stared, confused and quiet. This was supposed to be a happy day. As they turned away from the counter, the little girl tugged gently on her mother's hand. Her voice was soft, too soft for a child who was supposed to be excited. "Mom, did we do something wrong?" The question landed like a brick. The mom paused mid-step. For a second, her throat tightened. Not because of the saleswoman, not because of the stares, but because her daughter had begun to question herself in a world that still judges people by how they look. She bent down, looked her daughter in the eyes, and said gently, "No, baby. We didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes people treat others badly because they don't understand what real worth looks like." The daughter nodded slowly but didn't smile. That sparkle of birthday excitement had dimmed, just a little. And the mom? She stood tall, jaw set, not in defeat, but in quiet resolve. She was about to leave. But someone had been watching the entire thing. Just as the mom turned to walk toward the exit, holding her daughter's hand a little tighter now, a man near the back of the store slowly lowered the pair of sunglasses he'd been pretending to examine. He wasn't flashy. No gold chain. No obvious wealth. Just a calm presence, jeans, a soft gray hoodie, and a sharpness in his eyes that didn't miss a thing. He had seen it all. Every insult. Every sideways glance. Every attempt to diminish a woman who walked in with dignity and left with shame. He watched the sales associates return to their idle chatter like nothing had happened. Then, quietly, he stepped forward. He approached the mom and her daughter before they reached the door. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said warmly. "Is this how they treated you?" The mom, surprised, hesitated. "It's fine," she began. But the look on his face said, "It's not." He turned around, eyes scanning the room, voice rising just enough to command attention. "I need every employee on the floor. Right now." Silence fell like glass shattering. The room didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The staff looked at each other, confused and slightly amused, until one of them muttered, "Who does he think he is?" That's when the man reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a sleek black access badge, embossed with gold letters. Cameron Royce, Chief Executive Officer, Valencia and Company. Mouths dropped. The air snapped cold. The very same man whose photo hung in the front office of the flagship location. The founder. The visionary. The millionaire who started this empire from a garage with his grandmother's sewing machine. And right now, he was standing in joggers, calling out his own staff. "Let me be clear," he said, his voice now firm, his gaze locked on the employees who had mocked the mom. "I built this company for people like her. For the ones who get looked down on because they don't look the part." He turned back to the mom and her daughter. "My mother was a single mom too. And if anyone ever treated her like this, I would have burned the building down." The entire store had gone silent, customers, staff, everyone frozen in the weight of the moment. And in that silence, respect returned to the room, not for wealth, but for character. The CEO's eyes never left the two associates who had humiliated the mom. "You two. Off the floor. Now." No yelling. No theatrics. Just finality in his tone. The associate stammered, trying to explain. "We were just following protocol. We didn't mean anything by it." But Cameron Royce raised a hand. "If your protocol is humiliation, then it's not my company's protocol." They backed away, stunned and humiliated themselves, as a security staff member quietly motioned them toward the back. Meanwhile, customers who had stood by in silence began murmuring. Some pulled out phones. Others nodded in approval. One older woman stepped aside and whispered to the mom. "About time someone said something." The CEO turned to the remaining staff. "Let this be a reminder. No one walks into our stores to be measured by your assumptions. We sell luxury, but we serve humanity." The mom stood frozen. Her daughter looked up at her like she was watching a superhero moment unfold. And in a way, she was. Cameron turned back to the mom and gently said, "Now, if it's all right with you, I'd like to make things right." Before she could respond, he knelt slightly to address the little girl directly. "You were looking for something special for your birthday, right?" The girl blinked, then nodded. He stood and looked back at the mom. "Today, you're my VIP guests. Pick anything you want in this store. No price tags. No limits. This one's on me." The mom's eyes widened. "Sir, that's not necessary." But he cut in with a soft smile. "It's overdue." He called over a different staff member, a kind-faced older woman who'd stood watching from the sidelines, and said, "You're in charge of helping them. Whatever they need. And make sure this little one gets something sparkly." For the first time since entering the store, the little girl smiled wide. And the mom? She stood there, tears in her eyes, not because of the gifts, but because someone had finally seen her. Not judged her. Not tested her worth. Just saw her. As the mom and her daughter were escorted deeper into the boutique, whispers turned into applause. Customers who had once looked away were now clapping softly, some even cheering. One woman near the door recorded the moment on her phone, quietly saying, "This is what leadership looks like." The video would later go viral, millions of views, thousands of comments. Respect to the CEO? This made me cry. Every store needs a Cameron Royce. Even store employees from other branches began reposting it, calling it a turning point in company culture. But in that moment, it wasn't about the internet or the claps. It was about one little girl who got to smile again, and one woman who walked out feeling more than just seen. She felt honored. The mom never asked for pity. All she ever wanted was fairness. And now, the whole room knew her worth. As they stepped out of the store an hour later, shopping bags in hand, the little girl practically skipped beside her mother, wearing a new bracelet that sparkled in the sunlight. But the real glow was on her face. They reached the sidewalk, and just as they paused to wait for the light to change, the little girl looked up and whispered, "Mom, you looked like a queen in there." The mom laughed softly, brushing a hand over her daughter's curls. "That's because today, we didn't let them tell us who we are." Behind them, through the boutique window, the CEO stood watching, still wearing his hoodie, hands in his pockets, nodding to himself. He hadn't just changed a policy that day. He'd restored dignity. Later that night, after the excitement had faded and her daughter had fallen asleep clutching the velvet pouch from the store, the mom sat alone at the kitchen table. She looked at the receipt tucked in the bag, not for the price, but for what it symbolized. It wasn't about a necklace. It wasn't about the CEO or the cameras or even the applause. It was about being seen, truly seen, for the strength it takes to walk into a world that doubts you, and still carry yourself with grace. She smiled to herself, whispered a quiet thank you, and folded the receipt like a keepsake. Because one day, her daughter would ask about that moment. And she'd tell her, "That was the day we didn't just walk into a store, we walked into our power."